The other challenge that I'm seeing is that HOAs that did follow with the inspection are not following with the repairs.
Hey everyone, and thank you for being here today at the HOA Simplified Podcast. Today we're exploring the field of HOA construction planning and management with Johanna Aguilar, a marketing specialist at AD Magellan. And she's also a former community manager. So, again, welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have a list of questions and concerns kind of prepared that we're going to go through. And these are all questions and concerns that come from the communities. So we want to learn a little bit more about construction management, kind of the ins and outs, and what the homeowners should really look out for. So, before we get started, Johanna, introduce yourself and tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself as well as your firm.
Thank you for having me, first of all. And so, as you were saying, my name is Johanna Aguilar. Right now, I am the marketing specialist at AD Magellan. And I just started at AD Magellan as of mid-January of this year. Before that, I was a HOA portfolio manager. I actually had, when I left, I had about
Mhm.
6 accounts that I was
Right.
managing. But at some point in 2024, I was managing 8 accounts. And I did that for about 5 years. I've been in the industry for 6 years, and I did management for around 5 years. And it was all HOA portfolio management. I started as an assistant. So I started as an assistant manager, same company that I left recently in January. And then I moved into a portfolio
Nice,
manager.
nice. And
Yeah.
how has your experience in AD Magellan been so far?
It's been a roller coaster and it's been great. I'm not like I love the challenges. I love the roller coaster
Right.
type of feeling, but it's been amazing. Like my supervisors have made all of this. Everybody at AD Magellan has made the whole transition very smooth. And I'm not gonna lie, it's like it has its challenges because as a vendor it has different challenges of being a portfolio manager, but like so far, I believe it was a change for the best in this moment of my
Right, right.
life.
And being
Yeah.
in the industry, I also know that the management side and the vendor side is very different, right? But I'm very glad that
Yeah.
you're having fun on both ends, and and hopefully, today we can learn a little bit more about construction management, but as well as kind of your insights as a previous manager on construction management. So, if you're ready, we can dive into the questions right away. All right,
Yeah.
let's
Ready
do
to
it.
go.
So, kind of the first question that a lot of our homeowners had was, what steps can an HOA take early in the planning process to prevent construction issues later on? So, a lot of, HOAs say that, we want to prevent it, right? We want to be, proactive, not reactive. So what are some simple steps that they can take to kind of mitigate that?
So I think the first step is involving a construction management firm since before the discussion takes place. And I made this mistake as a
Mm.
manager myself. I often made the same mistake over and over, where I often would forget that construction management firms exist in the HOA world. And like I had big projects such as um, the type of projects that are in the reserve study that are due every so number of years, like asphalt, painting, re-roofing, and I had boards that were hesitant to bring in a construction management firm. So that was not even part of the discussion from the get go. And I feel like that was the biggest mistake of all because the boards often think that the manager is getting paid per the contract to draft the scope to be a roofer and an asphalt and a painting vendor all at once. When in reality, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing
Right.
most of the time. And Like if there was a project that I needed to go oversee, like a painting project, it's like, yeah, I could see where contractors would leave
Hmm.
tape and needed to be removed, but I would not see, if it was the same color, I would not see the difference of what I needed to look at because I'm not a painting expert, basically. As a manager, that's what my take was on it. So I was afraid of having that liability to sign off on a phase of the
Right.
project. And basically, like, I think involving a construction management firm should be like done ever since before the discussion takes place. Like the manager should invite the firm to the board meeting, and then we can present like the value of hiring a
Yeah.
management firm.
No, it sounds very important, and really, a home for it is an investment, right? And it takes money and it takes time to really protect your investment. And having a construction management firm does really sound like a kind of a good step, a preventative step, as well as if some issues come, then it's the smart way to resolve any ongoing issues, right? So
Correct.
then,
Correct.
so specifically, let's say, what are some of the effective construction planning methods that can really benefit an HOA, both financially and operationally? What type of planning do you see most common? What type of planning do you come across often? And what should HOA boards really know about the planning benefits?
So the first step is, once a discussion takes place, that we can present that to the board so that the manager doesn't have to answer questions when they don't know
Mm,
how to. And the first step of the process is doing an inspection. Doing, like, say, for example, the community needs to be re roofed, and your reserve study tells you that it needs to be re roofed. And, but there hasn't been any leaks. And then the board thinks, so because there's no leaks, the roofs are fine. Well, I think the inspection is going to tell you the roofs are probably not fine. And then after the inspection takes place, then we can submit the proposal for a scope and bid, which actually benefits a lot because we draft a true scope. And what I mean by a true scope is that since we're not doing the work, we're not going to be the ones re-roofing the community per se. Um, Basically, like, where they're doing the inspection for items that need to be repaired or replaced, and not trying to upsell
right.
items just for the sake of selling. So, and the benefit of having that one true scope is that all vendors, all roofers are going to bid apples to apples. Like there's not going to be any difference. Like when you have like three roofing proposals and you don't give them a scope, they're going to try to upsell you
Mm,
on a lot of stuff. And even if they don't upsell you, they're going to submit change orders in the long run. And that's what we try to avoid. I'm not saying it's impossible not to have change orders. There's going to be eventually change orders, but we try to include as much as we can as part of the scope and request pricing
right.
per item so that we know if there's potential for change orders, we know what the pricing is going to be at
Oh,
that point. And that's like, I feel like that's the key step to this whole situation, the inspection followed by the scope, because the scope's going to avoid the whole change order conflict. And then that's going to help budget, come up with the final budget. And in the budget, we always include a contingency to give in for that change
I
order
see.
amount. So we give you the total amount of the bidders and then the contingency amount, and we also submit a proposal for the actual management of the project, where we go on board and we inspect that the project's going per the scope, per the vendor specification, that all safety procedures are being followed. And basically, it avoids the manager and the board from having a liability of being like
Yeah.
there doing a walk.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And
I
obviously it seems like, as a construction management company, you're most knowledgeable maybe in the industry on kind of the process of selecting reputable vendors, right? Because as an HOA
Correct.
management company, we are also very selective in selecting vendors. We want to make sure that the vendors we propose to our clients are of the best, right? But we
Correct.
we are a small we do focus on small HOAs, and a lot of our clients and a lot of our viewers are also coming from a self management perspective. So for those self-managed communities, what are some tips and tricks on selecting the reputable vendors, whether it's contractors, builders, and what are the best ways to select them and to avoid the future defects that could come from that?
I think finding defects is not going to be
Right.
impossible. Like eventually, because we've seen it happen to ourselves. We've seen it happen that um, the board selects one of the three bidders that we provided, and it ends up that they also
Mm,
disappoint us. So we've had it happen. I think what we pay attention the most, and that what I'm suggesting the boards pay attention the most, is the warranty. The warranty is the number one thing I looked at as a manager too. It took me years to find out that warranty was important, but I eventually got there. Um, and not just the warranty on the materials, because they're the ones bringing the materials, the warranty on the work itself too.
mm,
Like it's important to find out how many years, the type of warranty, and also the per
yeah,
unit pricing. So if it's paint, it's like the vendor should know how many buckets of paint they need to buy. And if they run out of paint at some point and they need to go buy more, we shouldn't get a change order basically for thousands of dollars for one bucket of paint. Like we need, I feel like the proposal should include per unit pricing. Or for roofs, I've seen it happen that once they lift um, the the wood, once they lift the shingles, once they lift the tiles, the wood's
yep,
all rotted, and now we need a
yep,
sheet. Like we need a plywood sheet, and that's if the rod did not pass through um, the rest of the
yeah,
wood that support the beams or anything else, and like having the per unit pricing from the get-go, it's going to avoid a lot of
yeah.
headaches in the future.
It sounds like you really know everything about like you were doing roofs, and then you were talking about. I mean, I'm sure that that was very helpful for a lot of our self managed communities. I think so. Throughout your time at AD Magellan, what are some of the most common construction issues that you encounter in those communities? Something that maybe if it's not even an issue that HOA can prepare for because it's very difficult to find out, but some things that are just common that at least fiscally that the community can prepare for if it ever happens in the future.
So we see that the lack of communication is
Mm,
very common. And I'm talking about the connection between the manager, the vendor, and us. Like there's three parts of this: the manager, us, because we're the
mm,
middleman basically, and the vendor that's actually doing the work. And then sometimes it's not even the manager that is not communicating properly. Sometimes it's the board that's preventing something moving
mm,
forward. And then the manager's hands are tied, by the way. So it's 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 a lot of challenge. It presents a lot of challenges when that happens, because we just had it happen. Fortunately, a community that I used to manage as of
mm,
January. And we have a project going on because I was AD Magellan's client before I came on board, and I had just signed AD Magellan to a project for doing the balcony repairs,
yep.
followed by the, like, AD Magellan did the SB 326 inspection. So now we needed to do the repairs. And when I looked at the reserve study, I was like, oh, we might as well tie in refencing, since there's already going to be a contractor on site. And once I left, it happened that like the board was never communicating between themselves from the get-go. And then once I left, the board president resigned, and then it left only three board members that were never answering to any of the new
Mm.
manager's emails. And the vendor that was doing the work submitted a change
Oh.
order, and the change order was not signed by the board because the board would not be able to meet and meet quorum or talking to themselves. And so the manager was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you. So it took months before that change
Yeah.
order was signed. And the vendor had to pull out of the work until everything was back on track from like the community perspective. And so I feel like that's a
A
lot
lot
that
of
we see
challenges.
often. Like,
A lot of challenges.
yeah, yeah,
And challenges are inevitable, but trying to go through those challenges in the best way is our job, right? It's what we love to
correct,
do. We love to
correct.
help homeowners protect their most precious and valuable investment. And I think that's really the key to everyone in this industry. And
Yes.
kind of just going back, I know you mentioned SB 326. I also know there's SB 721. They're both kind of interrelated with balconies. They're both new laws that apply to California homeowners. So kind of number one, like, what is the difference between SB 326 and 721, and how can boards really make sure that they're in compliance with these two inspection mandates?
That's a really good question, and good thing that you brought it up because we're seeing a lot of
Yeah.
pushback
Yeah.
right now from HOAs, a lot of pushback. And basically, the difference between SB 326 and SB 721, from the back of my head, what I know is that it's almost identical. The only difference is that SB 326 relates to condominium
Mm.
and homeowners associations, and SB 721 relates to apartment buildings. SB 326, the deadline for the inspection was already due as of
Mhm.
January 1st, this past January 1st, 2025. SB 721 did get a 1 year extension. So the deadline's coming up for apartments where the inspection's due on January 1st of 2026. The challenges right now is that um, this is my personal honest opinion. I feel with everything that has happened in California since the beginning of the year, starting with the fires in LA, and now all not all the political fiascos that are happening around the state and the country. Nobody has
Yeah, no one has
followed up
time.
with. I'm
It's
talking.
too
No,
hectic.
nobody has followed up, and I'm not only talking about boards or managers. I'm talking about government entities. So it's not being like, yeah, they gave us a deadline, but it's not being followed up on. Like, no government official has reached out to the HOA and told the HOAs, hey, you're out of compliance because your inspection hasn't happened. But and so I feel like that changed the whole perspective, because now HOAs, I've talked to managers and I've talked to HOAs that have not completed their SB 326 inspections as of
Mm.
this date. And they basically said, we don't care. We're going to see if the government finds us or sends us something. And until they do, we don't care. And the other challenge that I'm seeing is that HOAs that did follow with the inspection are not following with their
I
repairs.
see.
And now the repairs, normally, if it's a red flagged unit, they have 30 days to comply with the repairs. Otherwise, they're sent to code enforcement with the
Mm.
county or the city. And if it's not red, they have like a couple more years. But we've had communities that we inspected in 2023 that had orange flagged repairs. Well, guess what? Now in 2025, those orange flags are probably now
Yeah.
red flags if they didn't
Yeah.
repair it. And lenders are requiring copies of the inspection report and the repairs left and right. So I think the more lenders require that, the more it's going to put a rush into the HOAs to complete these
Yeah,
repairs and these
like a bit of a
inspections.
pressure, right? Because I mean, it is important. It is
Yeah.
important. And so, yes, there is a lot of pushback, but it is something that has to be done. And obviously, as a construction management company, you guys deal with a lot of balcony inspections, for example. So when there are inspection results, whether it's orange flags or red flags, how do you as a firm kind of help the associations plan out their long-term repairs?
So with that, normally we provide a proposal, and it's just for
Hmm.
the inspection, because we have a team of inspectors that are SB326. They specialize in SB326. We have an in-house architect that goes with the inspectors and looks at everything, because the inspections need to be done by a architect or a structural engineer. And I think they just added a civil engineer to that. I think they just did. And we provide a proposal for the inspection only, and then we provide a copy of the inspection report. We provide a spreadsheet saying per unit how each unit is rated. But here's the thing that a lot of managers do not understand: the report is not a
Mm.
scope. The report is only satisfies a requirement, and that's it. Um, when we provide a phase two, which is the scope and the bid. So then we do the scopes. We've had managers that realized this, and they got the inspection done by another company, and then they realized this when they went out to bid, that they got not apples to like apples, oranges, and bananas scopes, and they're
Hmm.
struggling, and they're like, what do I do? And we're like, okay, send us the report, we'll take a look, we'll give you a proposal for scope and bid. And I think that's important. Even if they don't hire us as a construction management to do the project planning and the project management, at least get the scope and the bidding process right, because like that's going to
Right.
make the huge
Right.
difference, I feel.
Right. No, totally agreed. And I think it also goes to show that, like, for larger communities, the communities with 100 doors, maybe over 100 doors, they have a general manager and they have someone on deck who's kind of always keeping them in check. It might be a little bit easier for those communities to stay compliant and stay on track with the laws. I mean, there is a lot of hand holding, especially with the general managers, and that's good for them, right? But for a lot of the
Yeah.
smaller and self-managed HOAs, it is very difficult. I mean, the laws are changing every year, sometimes even more frequently. So, you know as it relates to SB 326, or any other laws that really require compliance, um, how can self-managed or smaller associations handle these type of issues? What do you think is the best practice for these smaller self-managed associations to do?
I think, for example, even for the
Hmm.
bigger ones, not just the small ones, if it would have been up to me as a manager, I would have advised everybody, get the inspection done as soon as possible. Don't wait until the day that it's due. Even as a manager, I know that I did that for specifically for SB 326. I knew that as the deadline would approach, I was I was thinking more ahead of time, and I was like, okay, if vendors are taking months to book an inspection of this type, what makes me think that in 2024 they're not all going to be already booked, because they need
Right.
to meet the deadline. So if they have the means financially to get everything done the moment a law gets put into place, I would say my first step: talk to legal counsel. That was like, I think I made really good friendships, like professional friendships with most of my
Yeah.
legal counsels, because I was always on the phone with them multiple times per week. And I was just basically trying to get everything done as fast as possible, so that I knew in the long run what I needed to prepare
Mhm.
for the future. In this case, for SB326, if there were any red flags, at red flag units, I knew that they needed to be um, fixed sooner rather than later. So if financially we had the means to do it, I would say,
Take
like,
care of it.
get it
Get
done,
it done. Mhm.
take care of it, and then update your reserve analyst to tell them you already took
Mhm.
care of all of these, because that's another thing that I see managers forget: to update
Yeah,
the reserve
that's a big one.
analyst, and then they get the reserve
Yeah.
study. Yeah.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And hopefully, a lot of our viewers, hopefully your reserve funds are good. Hopefully that hopefully, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but hopefully there's some room there so that you can work with the new compliances and the new laws.
Yeah.
But for boards that really are struggling with the reserve funds and don't have enough funds, what should be kind of the repair priorities? So, kind of like higher level, like what should be the repair priorities for these communities? Or is the answer just, a special assessment or maybe even a loan? Like, is there a repair priority? Is there something that we can even call a repair priority? Yeah, that's that. I think a lot of our homeowners are curious about that.
There is, and normally I would say special assessment and loan unless
Hmm.
absolutely necessary. I tried for when I was a manager, I tried not to rely too
Yeah.
much on those. I would try to just make a plan for years in the future and then
Yeah.
prioritize. I remember I had a community that everything was due on the reserve study, and um, they were funded. I think it was like 20 something percent funded. And I'm talking, it was roofing was due, asphalt was
Ooh.
due, painting was due, landscape renovations were due, everything was due. And then SB 326 came
Mm.
into place. And so I remember we prioritized where, like, I told them, you want to be strategic. You want to be strategic, not just on what's functioning versus what's not. It's like what makes the most sense strategically. Because, for example, you don't want to do major landscape renovations when you have leaking roofs, because then you're going to have the roofers come in and smush all your new plants when they get
Mm.
into those ladders. And then your plants are not going to be under warranty because you had another vendor come
Yeah,
in
no
and
one wants
smush them.
that.
So correct. So I told him, you know what? On your reserve study, yes, your landscaping's due, but it's not priority right now because you don't have the funds to take care of everything at the same time. So I told him roofs first, and then in the meantime of the roofs, the SB 326 to meet
Mm.
the deadline, then painting, then asphalt, then your landscaping at the very end. So there is strategic planning that takes place into these reserve studies. And also, if there's no means financially, if something can wait a couple more years, not the roofs, because once you have leaking roofs, you're going to be dealing with mold issues,
Mm.
restoration companies, and then you still need to deal with asbestos testing when you're going to be re-roofing. So if you add all of that, and then on top any repairs, because if anything inside the home got damaged because of a roof leak, you have the repairs. So it takes more financially if you
Right.
wait on the roofs. The roofs
Mm.
are very important. And when there's absolutely no means necessary to pay for that, I'm talking about even if you do a 5% special assessment, because most of the governing documents allow for a 5% without a vote. And then most of the governing documents allow for a 20% assessment increase at the year start without a membership vote. If that's not going to be enough, then yes, we're going to have to talk about possible special assessment, possible a bank loan. Either way, they're both going to require a
Right.
membership vote. So I would say the only difference between both of them is that the special assessment is going to require a higher upfront cost per
Right.
homeowner. That's the con. And then the loan, it's gonna include interest that they're gonna have to pay. So they both have their
Yeah,
pros and their
100%,
cons.
100%. And it's really about, no one wants a special assessment, no one wants a loan, but at the end of the day, if your roof is literally breaking down and you have no funds, then someone needs to do something, right? And it is
Correct.
best to keep the community safe, because that's a safety issue, right? That's a safety
Yes.
issue. And
Yes.
on that safety note, being in this industry, I think we both have some kind of crazy stories, whether it's funny stories or horror stories, whether it's about a community or a vendor or just someone we ran across. But if you could just give me, like, just a story or an example where, like, an early inspection caught something that would have been a much bigger issue later, or just a story that maybe you want to share where an early inspection really did justice, rather than pushing it later in the future.
So I did have a community as a manager that when we did the SB 226, 13 units, 13 out of 83 units that had a deck were red
Ooh.
flagged. And And AD Magellan did a really good job. And I'm talking here as a former client, not as an employee. They placed caution tape all over the decks, and I did my duty as a manager also to notify each one of the units, don't go on the decks, like don't go on the decks. it, I remember it was a very challenging HOA because the decks were not exclusive use common area. They were actually part of the condominium unit, which meant that the deck was actually homeowner responsibility to repair, not the HOA. And so when it came to the repairs, the homeowners did not want to pay for the
Mm.
repairs, and it was chaos all around because then the HOA told the homeowners, "We'll take care of it for you, but we're going to bill you back." And the homeowners were not happy because it was going to be in the tens, thousands of dollars for repairs because they basically needed to be completely redone. But one of them, I remember this vividly, one of them was already leaking water into the garage
Oh.
below. And we have no idea how long it had been leaking because nobody notified like, not even the unit below, not even the unit on top. Like the unit with the balcony should have seen that there was a huge crack on the floor. And then the unit below had the garage. We have no idea if it was an absent homeowner that was never going into the garage, but nobody notified us. And we have no idea how it got to that point. Like there
Mm.
was already mold growing into in between the units. Like it was a huge repair that needed to be done. And like if it wouldn't have been for the inspection that, because the HOA said we'll do the inspection, even though legal counsel advised that SB 326 might not apply to that community because the balconies were homeowner
Right.
responsibility. Um, the HOA still wanted to do a little bit of due diligence and said, "We'll pay for the inspection." If it wouldn't have been for that inspection, who knows what would have happened with that
Definitely,
chaotic case.
definitely. I mean, was that a construction defects issue, or was it just like the homeowners, you know? Well,
It's an old community, so it was definitely not
yeah,
construction defect. There was just simply a crack on the floor that was allowing water
it
to
was just
seep
one of those
in.
things, huh?
And then,
Yeah.
yeah. And then recently, right here, so our AD Magellan office is in
Mm.
Vista, California. Um, I'm talking about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Like it was definitely less than a
Wow.
month ago. And it was in that apartment complex. It came on the news. There was a tenant that walked outside on the balcony and his legs went through the deck. There's a whole photo. It came out on the news. I can
Oh,
send you the link
wow.
and everything. The fire department had to open up the entire deck because he was just stuck, and you could see the photo and you could
Oh,
see the little
wow.
legs just like from below.
So I
Yeah.
guess SB 326 and 721 is necessary. I mean, I mean, maybe it's good that these laws passed. I mean, really,
Yes.
that's horrible. That's horrible. Hopefully that individual is all right, but it also goes to show, like, let's check our balconies, guys. Like, let's keep let's
Yeah.
keep things let's keep things on mandate. Um, so for these communities that maybe don't have a manager or maybe don't use like a construction management company, are there any reporting systems or tools that help communities track compliance and progress over time?
Yes. So, for example, I would say for self-managed, that the board
Right.
manages the community. Um, Education would be the number one tool because I've seen so many boards that are not involved with CAI. They have no idea how to successfully and legally run an HOA. And then the board's not going to be consistent for so many years. All it's going to take is one homeowner that gets mad about something, and then they're going to say, "I'm going to change everything," and they're just going to run for a board position at the next election, and then you have a brand new board. So I would say keeping education consistent for board members, and then also the reserve study is not just a document to file in a file cabinet. The reserve study, I feel like it helped me a lot. I did ask some of my reserve analysts to send me the study in Excel format. If they did not send it because it was proprietary or something, then I would make my own Excel spreadsheet. And also, I kept track as a manager on a spreadsheet of every single unit as it pertains for balcony inspections, for example, every single unit that needed to be inspected and what the
Mm,
rating was. So I kept my own records on my computer. Even because, like, at the time, AI is just
right.
very new. AI is very new, and I grew up doing spread Excel spreadsheets,
Mm.
Word documents, PowerPoint presentations. So I still rely
Hey,
on those
me
right now.
too. Me too.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I think this is one of the questions that a lot of boards are just eager to get some answers to, and especially boards, self-managed board, because they do their own bids. But as a construction management company, and I think you kind of touched on this earlier as well. But what is a fair bid, and how do you make sure that boards get those fair bids? Like, how do you define a fair bid?
A fair bit, I would say it's one that is done apples
Mm,
to apples. Like, as a manager, oh my God, it would be one of my pet peeves getting like apples, bananas,
right.
oranges, bits. But then it was also my own fault, I felt, as a manager, because I, like, when it came to asphalt, for example, I'm not an asphalt vendor. I don't know what type of products. I was just doing a portfolio management job, and I did not know any better
Mm,
as far as asphalt products, as far as asphalt types, as far as like types of like installation, what it requires. I knew how to handle the logistics as far as letting the homeowners know, hey, get prepared for this, move your cars. I separated space for you, because I feel like also that's one thing that's very key to this, is that not all vendors are going to give you
mm,
notices to give to your homeowners. So I think I think it's more like the logistics part of it. It takes a lot, and I think a fair bid will include everything, as far as like it would be one scope for everybody to bid on the same scope, and it will be a well
yeah.
drafted scope. It will include materials, type of installation, warranty. I think the bid should include
Right.
logistics. And even if it does not include the scheduling, because the scheduling really depends on whether a contractor gets the job or not. And then also, talking about asphalt, also there's times of the year where asphalt cannot be
Yeah.
installed, absolutely cannot be installed. Like, you cannot install it when it's raining, when it's too hot. So you have to properly plan for it. So even if the scheduling is not included on the bid, just knowing in the back of your head when it would be ideal to schedule it and the logistics that it
Right. And
involves.
and for a lot of the self-managed communities that, I've worked with or I've consulted with, I always tell them, make sure to get different quotes, right? Because you're not going to know this
Yeah.
until you get different quotes. And, some communities just like to stay with the vendor, maybe it's a friend's friend, or just they've just been doing it for a long time. But, and if it's a really good relation, sure, keep it. But if you really are planning to, save on budget or maybe increase on quality, like, really just get different quotes, see what's out there. There's a lot of different firms, and companies like AD Magellan can also help with that. And
Not just that, I feel like a lot of governing documents do require the board to get at
right,
least three
right.
bids. And so, like you said, yes, I saw it. I saw it a lot. Like, oh, so Joe Smith with ABC
Hmm.
Company can do it for $5,000 less. And yeah, and as a manager, I would be like, okay, are they licensed, bonded, and insured? Are they are they going to send us a W-9 with their
Hmm.
insurance, their workers' comp? And um like, getting those different bits is going to give a, yeah, you're right, like, it's going to give a
No, 100%.
broader oversight. But when boards don't, they could be like, it could be considered
Yes.
negligence,
Yes.
unfortunately, because of what the government documents in
Yeah.
civil code
Yeah.
require.
100%. I think Joanna, you really did answer a lot of these homeowner concerns. Let's spend a couple minutes discussing more about specific to your firm, specific to AD Magellan, and kind of really your focus on the HOAs, how you guys kind of differ from other construction management companies in the HOA space, and really like what type of HOAs do you think can really benefit most from your services? Now's the time to let it all out. Now's the time to tell our viewers, hey, we're here.
Yes. So I actually know that you specialize in smaller community associations, most of the time
Mhm.
self-managed. And I'm just going to say we love those. We love those. There's no community that's too small for us. From a manager, I always told my boss, I need a
Yeah.
manager hat and then I need a vendor hat. From a manager perspective, I remember I would go get bids for a small project. Even if it was a big HOA, it would be a
Mm.
small project. And I would get so many contractors telling me, oh, we can't do it because it's too small of a
Mm.
project for us. And now internally, that would make me not want to ask them for a bid whenever I would have a bigger project, because then I would say, okay, if you're not taking in my smaller projects, what makes me think that you're qualified to get those
Mm.
bigger projects? And I'm so happy that I'm working for a firm that's just not like that. Like actually, I had a contact reach out to me like, hey, remember this community? It's too small. I don't know if you guys want to take it for a roofing inspection. And I remember it was like my first week here. And then I turned around and I asked our business development manager, and he was like, oh, no, I love those. We love the smaller communities. But also, we like to say no job is
Mm.
too big for us. We also like the big jobs. We have a construction defect case in a high
Mhm.
rise in LA. And so we do different types of construction management jobs. And also what I like about AD Magellan is that as far as construction management goes, we don't act as a general
Mm.
contractor. And there's a lot of firms out there that, like, for example, SB 326, they would do the inspection, but then they would also submit the bid for the repairs. We don't submit the bid for the repairs. We'll submit the scope. And then if you want us to bid it to your three favorite vendors, we'll bid it to your three favorite vendors. But we don't act as a general contractor on site. We don't do the work ourselves. So I feel that, and even yesterday I did a social media post about it. I feel like this firm is a true construction management only
Wow.
firm.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Um, that was great. And, you heard it here, folks, right? And, before we wrap it up and really kind of conclude our podcast, anything that you want to tell our viewers, both as a previous manager, but also as on the vendor side?
From the vendor side, I would tell boards, I miss my boards. I miss the interaction. Um, I don't miss the like complaints that I would get from like violations or stuff. That would be the awful part. But um, as a manager, I would say reserves are coming up. Get those reserve studies taken care of, and like talk to your reserve analyst, take him for a walk for the property, involve the board. Like there's a lot that constitutes managing an HOA, and I think right now we're heading up that reserve timing, start drafting those budgets, start planning financially for upcoming projects. So
Awesome. Awesome. Joanna, thank you so much for being here at the HOA Simplified show. And hopefully, we see you again. And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in once again. And we really hope to see you next time. Thank you, Joanna.
thank you, Neil.
Bye,
Thank you for
everyone.
having me.